Hey, how's it going? My name is Evan Schneider. I'm a colorist and cinematographer, and I'm also the creator of LutCo. Shooting in a flat color profile or log is definitely the best way to have the most flexibility in post-production when you're color grading. However, a lot of times it can be tricky to get the image to look natural and to convert it back to a standard Rec. 709 color space. Now, there are a handful of ways to convert your F-Log footage to Rec. 709, including LUTs or a color space transform, or even just adding contrast and saturation. These lead to varying results, and a lot of times it's hard to know what is doing the best or what might be actually hurting the footage more than it's actually helping. Being a Fuji shooter myself, I'm extremely familiar with the look of the F-Log image and also the other film simulations inside the camera. So that's what inspired me to create these LUTs. I wanted to create a LUT that checks all the boxes in terms of technical conversion from Fuji F-Log Rec. 2020 to a standard Rec. 709 color space, but also combine it with kind of an artistic and tasteful touch to create natural colors and combine the technical conversion with something that looks good right off the bat. So included in this pack, along with the base F-Log conversion LUT, is a +1, +2, and -1 and -2 contrast adjustments, as well as a warm version and a cool version. So with these, you can kind of compensate for footage that may be lacking a little bit of contrast or color temperature to make it useful in different scenarios where you may not have time to do a creative color grade, but you want to have something that you can deliver straight to the client. The 10 creative LUTs that come with this pack are a great way to experiment with different looks and be able to have a one-step conversion and color for your Fuji footage that works seamlessly with whatever camera you're shooting with. So whether you're working in Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve or Final Cut Pro X, I'd recommend having your conversion LUT be after any sort of basic corrections, but also before any sort of creative LUTs that you might apply afterwards, or any creative looks that you can create yourself. So all of this footage was shot in F-Log, and with this first shot, I'm just going to go into the input LUT, and I'm going to select the F-Log to Natural Rec. 709, V1, which is the base LUT, and right off the bat, we've converted the footage from F-Log to Rec. 709. Colors are very natural, there's no color cast, and you can see from the scopes that we're starting with a very good point where we still have detail in the shadows and highlights, and we have room to build our own grade on top of this. And if I wanted to adjust the image further from here, I could always bring down the shadows and push the highlights a little more, maybe push a little more saturation into the image and warm it up. And so you can see here's the before and here's the after. So the LUT has really helped us convert the footage into a natural profile, and we've built a creative color grade on top of that. So here's another really great example of a shot with skin tones in it, where we want to make sure that those are looking natural. So I'm going to apply the base conversion LUT, and I really just love how natural and clear this image looks. And again, I can add more contrast if I want to, or alternatively, I can even use the +1 or +2 contrast variants if I want it to have a little bit more pop. So here's before and here's after. Even if you wanted to deliver this straight to your client, if they just wanted a natural look, this is your color grade. Once you get used to shooting with these LUTs, you can predict how they're gonna look. You can really speed up your workflow by just throwing this LUT on top. So we're back at the base look. I'm just going to apply one of the creative LUTs, and let's go with Kodak Gold. So this applies a really nice, bright and airy look to the image. Skin tones are kind of pastel-y, and these green tones are pushed a little bit cooler. We can try out the filmic look for a little bit more of a darker, subdued overall warmness with a little bit of coolness in the shadows. And here is the folk soft look, which is a little more subdued, a little bit darker, but very rich tones and very punchy reds, and it works well on this shot as well. Here's another example of a situation where I might want to use the warm variation. And so on this shot, this is the base natural Rec 709 LUT. And then say I wanted it to be a little bit warmer, I can choose the warm version, and it just adds a nice overall warmth to the footage and brings out some of those nice warm tones in the sky here. I can also alternatively use the cold version if I want it to have a cooler tone. And I can also apply the +1 contrast if I want it to be even more rich. And here's the +2. And then I also have, here's back at the base, I have the -1 contrast and the -2 contrast. So you can see that that gives us a little more range in our grade to add the type of contrast or custom tone curve if we wanted to, but you can still see this is before and this is after. So you're still converting the F-Log to a more workable color space, but it just really depends on how much room you want for the rest of your color grade. This is another beautiful example of the LUT, and I'm just going to apply the natural Rec 709 LUT on top of it. From here, I could even increase the color temperature to warm it up, increase the saturation, and then I might decrease the shadows, increase the highlights a little bit, and add a tiny bit of contrast. Now we have a really nice creative look on top of the natural Rec 709 LUT, and here's before and here's after. Here's another example of the great dynamic range that these LUTs retain. You can see that this image has all the detail in the highlights and shadows, and when we apply the base LUT, it retains all of that detail. So from here, we can just balance the shot by maybe increasing the color temperature a bit, increasing the saturation, and adding a tiny bit more contrast to the image. We have this is before and this is after. If we wanted to apply a creative look to this shot, we could use, let's try earthy. This creates a nice moody tone. It adds a little more contrast, so I might back this off a tiny bit, and I might increase the shadows to bring back some of that detail. But just within one click, we have all of these adjustments. We have the moody, earthy LUT on top, and it really creates a nice, inviting, moody image to work with. Here's one more example of how the cold variant can work. So this is our base LUT, and I'd really love to bring out some of these blue tones in the image. So I'm gonna go down to the cold version, and it just pushes everything a little bit cooler. I can see here that my highlights are being pushed a little bit too far. So I'm gonna bring down the highlights and the white point for that to sit in a good spot. And I think I want a little more contrast, so I'm gonna bring the shadows down as well. And I can even further intensify this cold look by bringing the color temperature down. So this is before and this is after. So it's a huge difference, and we've really done that in just a few steps. So included with this pack are 10 creative looks that you can also use on your Fuji F-Log footage. Now these looks are really nice because they're calibrated specifically for F-Log with a creative look built into them. Since they're built specifically for F-Log, you know that they're going to work seamlessly with your workflow and look really good right off the bat on your footage. I'm just going to go to Kodak Gold. Kodak Gold gives a really nice, bright and airy look to the footage. It's got really cool green tones contrasted by nice warm skin tones. It's got really nice pastel highlights and a soft roll off in the highlights, and kind of blue shadows. So it creates a really pleasing, nice, bright and airy look. The filmic look is a little more subdued. It kind of lowers the exposure about a stop or so, and it features really warm highlights paired with cool shadows. And this gives a more cinematic filmic look to your image, which looks really nice on landscape shots or shots of people. Really any type of footage will look good with this look. On this shot, I'm going to apply the crisp LUT, and this LUT leans on the cooler side. It has a little bit cooler, kind of like magenta highlights, and so it's going to create a nice clean look for your footage. All right, the cool shadows LUT works really well for scenarios where you have shadows that you want to push more blue, but you want the midtones and highlights to stay a little bit more warm. So with the Cool Shadows LUT, this creates a really nice color contrast on any footage that's shot during blue hour or at night, and you want to preserve the skin tones as much as possible. Next, we have the Faded Green LUT, and this LUT works really well for landscape shots. It pushes the shadows a little more green, and I like this look because it pushes blue tones a little more teal, which can complement landscape shots really well. In this example, how the red of the rocks is contrasted by a more teal sky, and the green of the bushes is kind of pushed a little more orange to create that color contrast. Next, we have the Earthy look. The Earthy look is a very moody look that pushes the footage darker, has very deep, rich shadows, but it has a very soft and compressed highlight roll-off. So any footage that has landscapes or people or really bright highlights from the sun, this look can work really well with that footage. As you can see here, the sun is really smoothed off, where if you look before, you can see a bit of a line, and you can see those bright highlights really compressed down to fit within the rest of the image. All right, Folk Soft is a really nice look, and it applies just a nice overall warmness again to your image. I really love how it keeps the highlights a little bit more cool, but even if I wanted to warm it up, it still keeps those balanced, and I can even bring the exposure down, maybe bring the highlights down. And I love the warmth that it adds to the skin. It really brings a lot of life into skin, and it really makes a nice, moody, contrasty, very rich image. All right, so next we have our Faded look, which is a little bit more neutral in terms of white balance, but it keeps those highlights in check. This is useful for footage shot with bright highlights, but also interior shots that are naturally lit. It can really bring those highlights down and make them kind of look like they're glowing. It also leaves a lot of room in terms of contrast and white balance adjustments after you apply the look. Next, we have the Teal and Orange LUT. I really designed this look to be a little bit more subtle in terms of color contrast. I wanted it to have a little bit more natural colors. I'm just going to bring out the shadows a little bit on here because they're feeling a little bit dark. Maybe bring the highlights down a bit. It really makes very vibrant, very rich skin tones, and it pushes all of the colors into a very complementary color palette that can add a lot of drama and a lot of mood to whatever you apply it to. And finally, we have Arctic, which adds a really intense overall coolness to your footage that's great for anything shot in blue hour, but also anything shot in the snow or a colder environment where you really want to accentuate the coldness of the footage and give a nice cold feeling. Fuji cameras are known for their incredible colors, and I hope you can see how these LUTs can help you really take advantage of those colors and create some really nice looking grades, especially using the additional creative LUTs that are included. I hope you can see how these LUTs can really speed up your workflow, give you a lot more confidence when you're shooting an F-Log, knowing that you're going to be able to convert it to a natural looking profile when you edit. So I hope to see what you guys do with them, and thanks for watching.